single
Oh,
bite.
fantastic.
Is that the proper way to use that?
Well, I took a glazed Krispy Kreme donut and put a stuffed Krispy Kreme donut on top of that, and then ate
That's
them
not.
together.
That's way more than a morsel.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying
Yes.
it was a morsel. I'm just telling you what I did.
Well, how about you give us some morsels here with this Jets Patriots
Yum
matchup?
yum yum yum.
Your Jets here. I'll let you take the lead, but and give me your thoughts. But we got a sit with everybody but Garrett Wilson and the defense, and give me your
Yeah,
reasoning why here.
yeah. I mean, I think it's the Patriots defense, and especially in the run, is going to be tough. So Brees Hall, I would sit him and start other people over him. Zach Wilson, obviously, he's going to be a sit. Although, I know there's a lot of knocking on Zach Wilson. I thought he played actually pretty well through the first three quarters of that game, and then when the game was starting already out of control is when he threw the three interceptions. I'm going to give him a pass against that elite defense that he had to face. But this is a real test. This is nut up or shut up time against the Patriots, who the Jets have been 0-14 in the last 14 games against. So I do actually think that the Jets do come out with a win in this game. And I do think it's going to be on the back of the defense. And I think we're going to see, like we've seen it in each of the last 2 weeks, right? Garrett Wilson makes one play and it just amazes you. So Garrett Wilson, I think at this point, you have to start him, whether that's in a flex or as a wide receiver too. He's the target. Lazard has been targeted, but there's not enough volume there in the passing offense to really start anyone else at this point, unless unless Zach Wilson really takes it to the next level, which is like level 5 to level 4. Then I would say, yeah, we could consider starting other receivers or have them as sleepers or even in the tight ends, getting them involved a little bit more. But until then, Garrett Wilson is going to be the only play on this team from a receiver standpoint. And like I said, with Brees Hall, the reason I have him as a sit is just because this Patriots defense is very, very good against the run.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with it here. I mean, if you're in a tight spot because of all the running back injuries out there and you are having to play someone like Brees Hall or Dalvin Cook, it's going to be a tough road, and they're a flex play at best, and that's rough if you got them in your RB2. I'd go out there and I would try and snag, someone like Tajay Spears if he's out there. Go snag Roshan Johnson, somebody who's still going to have a good snap percentage, but it's going to have a better opportunity because they're not facing this Patriots defense. And we're all in agreement. And Chris, I double your sentiment here that Garrett Wilson is a must start every single week, regardless of who the defense is, because he is the playmaker for this offense. And we all agree that he's no longer a wide receiver one. He's going to have games, I think, this season where he'll put up wide receiver one numbers. But when you're thinking about starting him, you're starting him as your wide receiver two. Because his floor is so much lower without Aaron Rodgers out there. And until we see Zach Wilson mature, which I think we have, he still kind of went, like you said, those three interceptions late in at the end of the game kind of went back to his old ways. But I think we'll see a couple more growth opportunities throughout the season here, especially after some of these tougher matchups. So I like the picks. This defense you can't go wrong with. They're plug and play every single week. You could play them because they can go toe-to-toe with the best of them. Well, let's move on to the Patriots. And the thing about the Patriots here is they have had an 0-2 start for the first time since 2001, which was Belichick's second year. And I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that was the year that Bledsoe ended up getting hurt and Tom Brady ended up coming in. So not to say that 0-2 is a bad thing, but it is amazing to see at this Belichick run that since 2001, they have not had an 0-2 start to the season. But it makes sense why they have had an 0-2 start. They've been a little bit more successful than they were on average last year, but not by much. Their defense is keeping them within the games, period. However, Ramondre Stevenson is a start here. He's a start every single week, doesn't matter who he's playing, because this guy is not only using the rushing game, but he's also using the receiving game. We have sits for Mac Jones against this tough pass defense. We have sits for Zeke Elliott because, to me, they're going to end up having to pass the ball a little bit more, and he hasn't been seeing much work outside of the running game and short yardage and goal line. Sit Juju because even without the article saying they don't know if they could trust him, I still think that Juju is one of the sub receivers on this offense. That's why we have Kendrick Bourne as a sleeper, because if anybody besides Hunter Henry, who's a start for us, is going to be catching touchdowns for this team, it's probably going to be Kendrick Bourne. And then we have the Patriots defense here, because if you're against Zach Wilson, turnovers are bound to happen. And so giving yourself a defense that could create turnovers, possibly get into the end zone with a touchdown themselves. I wouldn't even be surprised if each team has a pick six this game. It wouldn't surprise me.
Judon is probably going to have 3 sacks himself.
Yeah.
The offensive line for the Jets is struggling right now. So, yeah, and that's another reason why Brees is a sit. But this defense should get after him.
Yeah. We'll move on to the next lineup in our slate, and we've got the Colts-Ravens. Colts here. We have Anthony Richardson as a start, but he has not cleared concussion protocol, so disregard that start. It's most likely going to be Gardner Minshew. I think he's officially out.
He's been ruled out.
So Gardner Minshew, so disregard our start here. You are not playing Deion Jackson. That guy has now found himself a nice, comfy, cozy, almost permanent position on the bench there, because Zach Moss came in and just absolutely dominated in touches and rushes. And so I think it's a good time to line up Zach Moss, especially without Anthony Richardson in here. And then Michael Pittman is a start for us, because Gardner Minshew, for those who haven't had a chance to watch him play or don't even watch the games when Anthony Richardson's not playing, Minshew actually has ability. He's shown it with every team he's played for, whether it be the Jaguars, the Eagles, and now the Colts. He's going to get the ball to big-time receivers. He may make some mistakes here and there, but he's a gamer, and I like him for that, so it doesn't make me downgrade Michael Pittman that much. But I'm not going to upgrade any other pass catchers there. And the Ravens here, I would say the Colts are a sneaky sleeper pick here. They are one of the tougher rush defenses out there, and they're going to force the Ravens to pass the ball. I have them as a sit because I don't see them in my top 12, but don't be surprised if they shut down this rushing offense, and it's going to have to be a Lamar Jackson kind of backyard football type of game, because they're going to have to make them. Yeah, I mean, just look what the Texans did to the Ravens week 1. They took away the run. I think the Colts are going to do the same thing. And if the Ravens pass well like they did last week, they're fine. And that's why we have the Colts as a sit. But expect the Colts to really make it harder for them on the run game.
Yeah. And then for the Ravens, obviously you're going to start Lamar Jackson. I think that Gus Edwards is a really good start this week. I think he's going to have the opportunity. He looked good. There's no Justice Hill. He's been ruled out. Odell Beckham has been ruled out. So I'm sitting Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. Go ahead and fire those guys up into starting position. I've seen a lot of hate this week on Zay Flowers, saying he's not a true wide receiver one, and he's barely a flex play. It's he's the wide receiver one there. He is getting volume. He just hasn't scored the touchdowns that we last week. He didn't score the touchdown. Everyone else kind of got involved. He's gonna have the touchdowns.
He's gonna have a touchdown this week. He's gonna have one this week.
Yeah. And then the defense for the Ravens, I'm going to go ahead and start against Minshew. Although this is one that you could toss up in the air, but without Anthony Richardson, I do think that this is a good start for this defense. I don't trust the rest of this offense for the Colts very much. So the Ravens, go ahead and fire those guys up.
Yeah, the one thing about Zay Flowers and the hate he's getting too is people want to knock that, all his yardage came from one play, all this and all that. But that happens. Look at Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson had one big play last week, and nobody's
people are hating on him.
But I mean, they're not giving him hate. I mean, look at plenty of other receivers out there. Look at back in the day for Odell Beckham Jr. when he was electric starting for the Giants. He would have that one big play up the middle and be gone. And that was the majority of his yardage. And then he probably had 40 yards combined for the rest of that game over a course of 10 other targets. So it happens with these guys because they're facing the top coverages. And so they're not always going to be open every single play. They're not always going to be Justin Jefferson every single play or Tyreek Hill. There's only a few of those gems in the NFL here, period. Look, even Jamar Chase is getting shut down like crazy. So,
shocker.
Yeah. So to me, at the end of the day, don't read into that Zay Flowers hate. We like him. Fire him up and be happy for it this week too, because I think he finds the end zone. So let's move on to the Titans and Browns. This is going to be an interesting matchup. It's two tough defenses against the run, and both offenses are run-heavy offenses. So they're going to make both quarterbacks throw. And to me, I am sitting Ryan Tannehill. We are starting Derrick Henry. And I know he's got a toe issue, so monitor that, but it looks like he should be good to go for Sunday. He has not been ruled out, but that makes me like Tajay Spears even a little bit more. So if you've got him sitting on your bench and you're flip-flopping players in your flex position or your second flex position, this is one that you may want to throw him out there in your flex because he's going to have more opportunities, I think, this week, and he's definitely going to have some passing opportunities, and so he should gobble up some big yardage because he is electric with the football in his hands. Outside of that, I'm not playing anybody. Not Chig, not Treylon Burks, not DeAndre Hopkins. I'm like, I don't want any part of them. And I don't even want to play this defense, even though they've been pretty good and they're the number one rush defense here. They'll probably end this week as the number one rush defense as well. But I think Deshaun Watson has a kind of a little bit of a coming out party here this week.
Yeah, I do too. So we'll move over to the Browns where we have Deshaun Watson as a start. Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt both as sits against, again, the tough rushing defense here. Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore both as starts. Peoples-Jones is a sit. Njoku as a sit. And then this defense as a start. Now, Njoku and Peoples-Jones, the volume just hasn't been there for them.
Yeah.
Njoku's been like targeted on these like short passes. They haven't really targeted him in the red zone too much. Which is surprising considering the last couple games of last season where he was one of the main targets for Deshaun Watson in the red zone. I do think that Stefanski decides to open up this passing offense a little bit more now that Nick Chubb is not there. I know everyone, the big waiver ad this week was Jerome Ford. I know Kareem Hunt, another big waiver ad just to kind of get a piece of this rushing offense, but they are not Nick Chubb. And even though this offense was revolved around the run, they do have capable weapons on the outside, and they do have a quarterback that does like to throw the ball. Now, the knock on Deshaun Watson is that he hasn't really been accurate this year. He's been, especially as like in the middle to deep routes, he has not been accurate. Now, that could change with the volume being dedicated to throwing the ball, which is why I think Amari Cooper is a great start this week. He looked really good. Elijah Moore, the way they started to utilize him when Nick Chubb went down, I really like his usage in this offense. So go ahead and fire those guys up, especially against this just Swiss cheese passing defense in the Tennessee Titans. This is going to be one where like Jono said, the strength of both these defenses in the stopping the run. But Cleveland has a really good defense in the secondary too, whereas the Tennessee Titans do not. So if I am an offensive coordinator, I'm going to target a weakness on that defense, and that weakness is throwing the football. And if you have weapons on the outside and you have guys that are capable of getting open, they're going to throw the ball more.
Yeah.
Now
I'd say the only thing about
they just go trying to run the ball down their throats.
Well, the only thing I will say is the Tennessee Titans are a very good rush defense inside those tackles and the DNs, but they struggled. If you watch any of their games last year, especially Saquon Barkley and some of these other guys, when running backs bounced it to the outside on them, they struggled the most. They were not very good at containing when a running back would bounce them to the outside because their cornerbacks and everybody, once they got to the next level, weren't great at stopping. So a lot of chunk plays come from there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns decide to change up the way they run the ball a little bit in plays and try and get outside of them because Jerome Ford is quick. And the one thing I will say about Jerome Ford, we have him as a sit. And I picked him up in my league. I'm going to start him, but I'm in a position where it's Dameon Pierce or him. And right now, the opportunities are probably going to get to Jerome Ford because he's going to have pass catching opportunities because he did pretty well out the backfield this past Monday night. But the thing you got to also understand is like some of the people who got him and paid fab for him, you needed him desperately to the point where you are probably going to have to start him. So no, he's going to face an uphill battle. I mean, just look at Kelly last week when they tried running him between the tackles. Now, obviously, when Kelly plays, they don't use him out the backfield like they do Eckler. I think they'll use him, Jerome Ford, more as a check down and him out the backfield a little bit more than Kelly was used. But again, it's going to be a difficult game for Jerome Ford. He may not break 50 total rushing yards, even if he gets 16 carries. And for him to get in the end zone, it's probably going to have to be, on the 1 yard line, 2 yard line, or a swing pass out the backfield in the red zone for him to get in there. So don't expect a lot from him, but I understand for those out there, we're saying sit him, but you may be in a position where you can't sit him. And he's your best play. So
obviously.
Like, to me, I could play Dameon Pierce in a better matchup, but I don't think the way that offensive line is for Houston, it makes sense. I'd rather take the chance with Jerome Ford in a good offensive line and a better rush offense, even though they're playing a tougher defense.
Yeah, the sit is purely for matchup purposes. If you have to play him, go ahead and play him. It's just gonna be a struggle. Like, if you're gonna expect him to have the week that he had last week, you're not gonna get that. Not against this rushing defense.
But he does have that home run ability, which I do like.
I mean, listen, let's be honest on like the totals from last season or the last week. All right, he had 69 yards on one play, and it was a freak play. He literally ran like 107 yards for 70 yards.
I know.
Where he had to basically change the course of the field. He gets a great block from Deshaun Watson, not a great block, but he got in the way. He got enough in the way, and he broke that off. Outside of that, did he really look that efficient? I mean, he had another 15 carries and only for 30 or 40 yards. So he had the one big play.
Yeah, for about another 40 yards. So, but right. Yeah, I mean, he did have one giant play, and he probably again, like.
So let's be honest and temper our expectations, because if you're looking at
he's not Nick Chubb, we know that.
Yeah. If you're looking at end of game stats, it's really deceiving because you don't see the big play in there, and you don't see the efficiency beyond that. If you're just looking for yards per carry. That's not always an accurate number according to what actually happened in the game. So, listen, he's going to be a play just based on volume alone. And Chubb is going to come in and play in this game, unlike Akers, who will talk. Not Chubb. Hunt is going to.
I actually don't know if Hunt plays. I don't know if he suits up.
They came out today and said he's going to play. All right, at least he's going to suit up in that game. I don't know how many carries he's going to get, but he's going to suit up. Whereas they came out today with like Akers and said that they don't think he's ready with this offense on such short notice and the trade to suit up. So Hunt's going to go. I don't know. It could be 3 carries, right? It could be 15% of snaps. Like, it could be nothing. Jerome Ford could get it's just, this play is not that great against this defense.
No, he's got 2 other consecutive. We'll move on to the Broncos real quick. I know I'm showing them up here for you guys watching on YouTube, but he does have 2 other tough matchups coming up too as well. So temper your expectations. I think it's a long-term play for Jerome Ford, and it's his job to lose. So if you spend your fab on him, thumbs up to you, but it doesn't mean you're in the clear yet. Moving on to the Broncos versus the Dolphins. This is a matchup that I'm excited to kind of watch here. Right now, for the Broncos, we're starting Russell Wilson. He looked pretty good last week. Obviously, one came from a Hail Mary touchdown pass to really pad his stat line. That being said, it doesn't matter. He got sacked 7 times, I think, last game, or something like that by the Commanders, and still kept his team in the game. And Javonte Williams, we have him as a start here. He had the lion's share of carries, but barely took carries last week. So to me, I think you're playing both of them. You're not playing Jerry Jeudy. He did not look like he was ready to go. He looked a little rusty, so to speak. Samaje Perine didn't get opportunities that you're looking for in a play for him. But Cortland Sutton was open often for Russell, and they had a good rapport going there. Troutman was just lost. Like, they did not even target him, I don't think, last game. I thought it would have been a surefire, nice sleeper pick. I had him as a sleeper for us last week because Greg Dulcich is out. I thought it would fire up Troutman. He had 5 targets the week before, and 3 went to Dulcich after that too. So I'm like, wow, 8 targets week 1. He's going to have more than, at least 5 week 2. No. So, but this Denver Broncos defense against the Dolphins, we're saying start them. They are very good with their cornerbacks. They're good for their pass rush. I think they're going to get to this quarterback. They're going to cause some turnovers. Tua is not turnover proof. And he is sack capable. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to need to get here. They're going to need to create turnovers because otherwise the Dolphins are going to be able to high fly over, them pretty quickly. And it's going to be a long game.
Yeah. And then moving on to the Miami Dolphins, you're going to start Tua, even though he struggled last week. Actually, he didn't really struggle last week. He just didn't have the touchdowns because Raheem Mostert had the touchdowns. And that being said, you're going to start Raheem Mostert. Again, this is another tough matchup against a good defense. But we saw Brian Robinson Jr. be effective last week against them. I do think that the Broncos defense has a lot more to worry about in the Miami offense. And we'll get to, Tyreek Hill is going to be a start. We have Jalen Waddle as a sit, and that's only because he might not go. So this is something you should keep your eye on tomorrow and then early Sunday morning. If he does go, I would go ahead and fire him up and start. If he doesn't go, I really like River Craycraft as a sleeper.
Yeah, I agree with you on Craycraft.
I think he was involved last week in the game. It's a guy that every year, he's kind of like the Trent Sherfield position that from last year with the Dolphins. If Tyreek Hill or Waddle go down, then you're going to have those guys available. And Craycraft is involved. Durham Smythe, again, I think he's a start. If you're a pass catcher in this offense, the way the tight end position has been going this year, I do think he's going to have the opportunity against this defense to get open. I am going to sit this defense, though. The way Denver looked last week and kind of just shooting the ball out, they have capable receivers downfield. The Broncos looked a lot better in throwing the deep ball last week. And so Miami can be susceptible to that. So I'm going to go ahead and sit this defense.
The one thing I will say about the Waddle play too is everybody's like, well, if he comes in, is he going to play every single snap? Is he going to be 100% in there? He doesn't play 100% of the snaps anyway. They bring him in and out for packages, and he probably averages about 75% of the snaps on a game, sometimes less by the end of the game. But that doesn't matter because you play him for his big playability. He's one catch and gone. He's 4 catches for 90. It's like that's what you need from him. So even if he gets 4 catches for 90, he's still going to put himself in a good position. If he falls in the end zone, he's all of a sudden a top 15 wide receiver on the week. So right. Yeah, maybe they drop him down to like 65% of the snaps and don't put him in on some of these run plays and other plays. That's fine because when he's in there, he has a chance of catching the ball. Right. So let's move on to the next matchup. Bills Commanders. Chris will let us know too when we get to that 4:00 slot so that we can let you know. But we're still here on the 1 o'clocks. Bills versus Commanders. We got starting Josh Allen, James Cook. This is another one that's going to be a tough game for James Cook. You've got a very good Commanders rush defense. It could be a tough game for Josh Allen because they've got a very good pass rush. But we are sitting Damian Harris for that reason because it is a good rush defense. I think when they get into that red zone area, I think you're going to see them having to pass the ball rather than run the ball in. However, we are only starting Stephon Diggs out of our wide receivers. Gabe Davis, to me, it's just not enough volume. Not enough big plays and opportunities for him. Stephon Diggs is definitely the go-to guy there, volume-wise. Dalton Kincaid, I think he missed practice yesterday, possibly. So keep an eye on Kincaid's health there. It doesn't make Dawson Knox an automatic start. It makes him possibly a sleeper play just because of possible more target volume. But you are playing the Buffalo Bills defense because the Broncos defense last week showed what they could do to the Commanders when they pressure them. Yeah, they gave up points, and but they still caused plenty of turnovers, and that's what you're looking for in defenses. Turnovers give you points, so the more you can get, the better.
Yep, you're looking for sacks and turnovers. So going to the Washington Commanders, Sam Howell's after his week last week, he's going to be a start. Same with Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson is one of the hidden gems this year. I've seen a lot of things this week about he's a sell high candidate. He's a hold candidate. I don't know why you'd sell him on a year where every running back is either hurt, injured, or underperforming. You don't sell the guy that is the second best, third best running back in terms of fantasy.
Well, let me say one thing because I did do a short on buy, hold, and sell, and he was my sell. But I did put a quick caveat. I did say if you have depth at the position, I think he's a good sell high because he's playing at his ceiling. But if you don't have depth at the position, do not get rid of him because he's still going to have plenty of opportunities. He's still the RB1 there, but I think he's playing at his ceiling with a RB14 and RB1 finish. I think you could get good value. If you've got depth and in need of another position, you can really, really play that value and steal from somebody who's in need of that running back. But again, You could also just hold on to the chips because running backs are not a dime a dozen in this league. We know that.
Yeah, he would be a hold for me. But You're going to sit Antonio Gibson again throughout the first 2 weeks. He hasn't shown that he's involved enough in this offense to be a fantasy relevant starter. Terry McLaurin, I do think, is in line for a really good game. I'm going to go ahead and start him. I had to downgrade Jahan Dotson to a sit this week. He would be potentially my sleeper, but I've had him as a start the last 2 weeks, and he's just really disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
The way he's being utilized right now is not what we thought coming into the season. And I'm going to have like a show me week before I really put him back as a starter. Curtis Samuel, sit. Logan Thomas is a sit for me, even though I do like him and I do like this matchup for him. And then the Commanders defense, I think I am going to sit. I do think that this Bills offense is good enough. I think that they're going to get points. So, they might have some sacks and some turnovers. They can get after Josh Allen. Josh Allen can be reckless with the football. But I just don't think they're going to have enough sacks and enough turnovers to make up for the amount of points that they're going to let up.
This game could go kind of like how that Jacksonville Chiefs game went last week. Very under, and defensively, I have the Washington defense in our league, and I've held on to him and not switched him out for somebody on a streamer because they have 10 sacks in 2 games, and they can get after. And the second game was 7 sacks because Chase Young played his first game last game against Denver, and they were electric. So we know what happens when they try and rush. When Josh Allen tries to rush, he makes mistakes. Not rush in terms of running with the ball, but rush his passes, can make mistakes. It's a good defense. We may not have 12 defenses on here that we're saying start. So this is one of those ones that Chris and I are both kind of on the fence with. Like, there's going to have to be 12 defenses somebody starts in this league because you have to start a defense in your league unless you're one of those that doesn't have it. So this could be one of those teams that could finish inside the top 12 because they're good. They're just facing a tough opponent. So.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Falcons versus the Lions. Falcons, we're doing it again this week, exactly how we had it last week. Even though Drake London kind of had a little bit of a glow-up game with that touchdown, we are still only suggesting to start the running backs. They are the prime, tried and true gems of this offense. You know what you're going to get out of them. You throw Jake London out there, he could have another terrible dud game. Kyle Pitts, you could throw him out there. He could have 100 yards and a touchdown all of a sudden. This could be his, first big game of the season. But he could also be Kyle Pitts to see what he's been doing, which has been more of the armpit, pun intended, of the Atlanta Falcons. So that's
Dallas yet?
Maybe when his rookie contract's up. Don't forget he does have his 5th-year option. I don't think the Falcons are getting rid of him. But that being said, listen, we understand if you have Drake London and you have some injuries, because there's a ton of them, he is a flex play to me right now still. He wide receiver 2 at best, but it's a low wide receiver 2 because he hasn't shown consistency between the past 2 seasons for me to feel comfortable as a locked-in position there. So I get it if you have to start him. It's not a bad start. It could be a game where that they could go down a little bit, but this defense has been keeping games very competitive. So I expect them to use the running game to try and run out the clock and keep it out of Goff's hands. So
yeah, I do think Bijan and Algier are in lines for really big games here. I think so. Detroit's offensive line is banged up, and they're going to be without some starters. And so I don't think that they're going to be like, this isn't one of those games where Atlanta is going to get behind in. And we saw in week 1 against Carolina where they're in the game, they're going to focus on the run, right? Week 2, they got behind, and now they had to pass the ball. So this is why all of our pass catchers in that offense are going to be sits. I actually think they're going to be in this game a lot more against Detroit. And I do think that this defense is susceptible to running the football, and Bijan, Algier, and this running back tandem, I think, is in line for really big days. I think the people that drafted Bijan in the first round and in the first couple picks, this is going to be a week where you're going to be like, "Ha, I told you so. He's so great."
I don't know. I mean, Algier's getting his.
I know.
I don't think we see that until the end of the season, and then you guys can prove us wrong.
I think Bijan's going to have one of those games this week. I think Algier could also have a really good game this week, but I think Bijan is going to have his first true like explosive game where he's going to be a top 5 RB finish on the week. So if we want to move on to the Detroit Lions, we got Jared Goff as a start. David Montgomery's out in this game, or he's doubtful in this game.
He's doubtful. You could pretty much consider him out.
Yeah, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I would say fire him up. I think this is going to be a game where Gibbs has a lot of carries and a lot of usage. Even though we were disappointed by when Montgomery went down last week, what kind of usage Jahmyr Gibbs got. But I do think this is a week where Jahmyr Gibbs gets a lot more involved. Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, he's nursing a turf toe injury. He is expected to play. He's still questionable, but they're expecting him to play. Marvin Jones is going to be a sit. Josh Reynolds moves up out of the sleeper. I love his projections for us. He's a sit week 1, the sleeper week 2, full on start week 3.
Well, that's because we had Marvin Jones being the role that he's playing, and he had his opportunity, like we said, week 1, and I think we could have been right in that had he caught some balls and not coughed it up. But Josh Reynolds has been just consistent.
Yeah, he's been great. He's been great thus far. I know he's a big waiver target this week, so go ahead and fire him up. He's a good matchup this week against Atlanta, and then Sam Laporta, go ahead and start. And this defense, I would sit. And again, I just think that they're going to it's going to be a slower pace.
Well, CJ Gardner-Johnson's out. I mean, torn pec. So for the season, that was probably that was their best defensive player in my opinion.
Aiden Hutchinson?
Dude, CJ Gardner-Johnson was all over the field. Turnover creation. Hutchinson's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But the more plays that CJ's involved in, I think it's going to hurt them the most.
Oh yeah, I do. I think he's great up in the run as a physical presence there, and that's why I think Bijan is in line for having those explosive plays downfield. I think that Bijan actually breaks one off in this game for a long touchdown run. So I'm sitting this defense.
Yeah, I do like the Jahmyr Gibbs start. I think this is one where he gets a lot more opportunities. Now let's not forget, Dave Montgomery left the game with an injury. And everybody's like, oh, why didn't they just flood it to Gibbs? Well, that wasn't the game plan. That wasn't the packages they were ready for. So why throw your rookie out there in a comfortable situation? So why not give it to a guy, Craig Reynolds, who was backing up and knows what he's doing. He's been there before. He played for them last year. So now you've had a whole week of Jahmyr Gibbs practicing to be the main guy here and probably get the majority touches. I think you'll see a different game plan from the Lions here, especially with Amon-Ra. For those who don't know what turf toe is, I don't want to go into the details now. Look it up. Let's just say if you're a 350-pound lineman and you have turf toe, you're not going to be able to push over a 150-pound person very easily using your legs. You have no leverage at that point. So think about the quick movements of Amon-Ra and the cuts. They had to put a plate in his shoe last week, and he lost a step because of that. So, I mean, who knows? Jahmyr Gibbs may end up becoming more of a receiver in this game too, in the intermediate routes. But
I'd say even a sleeper in this game is Khalif Raymond. We don't have him listed here, but I would say he's a good sleeper for this week, especially if Amon-Ra is limited. That Khalif Raymond, I do think, is going to be the next guy up, and we saw him produce last week when Amon-Ra went down.
So let's move on to the Packers. And Jordan Love's team here. He's doing a fantastic job so far. For those who picked him up off waivers early or happened to draft him, you kind of struck gold a little bit here, green and gold to be exact. And to me, we're starting Jordan Love here. Aaron Jones has been practicing in limited fashion, so we have him as a start. That start is the caveat is he's got to play. If he plays, we're starting him because it means they feel good enough because A.J. Dillon is a sit for us even if Aaron Jones does not start. Dillon has not proved to be effective enough to feel comfortable to start. I get it. If you're in a position where you've lost running backs or you happen to be the Jonathan Taylor owner and maybe you own Eckler as well and you're sitting there and you got to throw somebody out there, you got to put A.J. Dillon in, start him. I mean, he's going to get volume if Jones isn't in there, even if Jones is, but you don't like it. We have Jaden Reed as a sleeper because his 2 touchdowns last week in the red zone was fantastic. Romeo Doubs is a start. Christian Watson did practice in limited fashion. I don't know if he had a full practice today or not. I forgot to look at the report. But that being said, we know how Christian Watson is. He's fast, he's athletic, and that hamstring could go at any time again. Romeo Doubs has shown the rapport with Jordan Love. He's been a good outlet. In that final drive of that game last week, he went to Doubs 3 times. They had great coverage out there in Atlanta, so it was tough. However, I see him still being the go-to guy. And like I said, preseason, he's going to lead the team in receptions this year, in my opinion. He's just surefire, sure-handed guy. He's just not as explosive as Christian Watson is. So,
yeah, we talked about in our waiver episode about Jaden Reed, and the reason we liked him so much is how they're scheming the ball to him. So even if Christian Watson comes back, I don't think it's going to affect Jaden Reed as much because they're trying to get him the ball as much as they can. And whether it's on these shuffle passes, on like a jet sweep pass, out of the backfield, on the kind of pick plays on the outside. I do like him as a really good sleeper this week. And then moving on to
let me quick say about Jaden Reed. The reason why I think he was so successful last week is they were without Aaron Jones. So a lot of those routes out into the flat that he caught both for touchdowns, that's an Aaron Jones special, out the backfield like that or coming across. So I like him still this week, even if Aaron Jones plays, because I think they're going to limit him to a certain type of gameplay and running the ball, and not necessarily have him out there for as many snaps. But when Aaron Jones is fully healthy, I want to see if they decide if they still scheme him the same way, because that's what I was saying to myself. I'm like, man, he's just doing exactly what Aaron Jones was doing them from before, catching out in the flat, turning up the field, and getting chunk yardage on mismatches. So keep an eye out for that. But this game in particular, because you still have a question mark at Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, I'm firing Jaden Reed up as a sleeper and a flex play to me.
Yeah. And then moving on to the Saints, Derek Carr, he's going to be a sit for us. Jamal Williams, still nursing that injury. He left last week's game. He's going to be a sit. Tony Jones Jr. came in. I know a lot of people are saying Kendre Miller is going to get a lot of volume this week, but we'll see how the usage there. Either way, I'm probably going to sit either one of them.
I'm going to sit both of them too.
Yeah, I just don't like the plays. And then next week, Kamara is coming back.
This backfield is just disappointing to me to start with Jamal Williams. Their offensive line just hasn't looked good run blocking at all. Yeah. So until we see what Kamara does, I'm not starting any of these running backs, unless you have to.
Yeah. Olave is actually going to be a sit for me this week. I think Michael Thomas is going to be a start. Rashid Shaheed, he's probably going to be sleeper or start status for me all year. Because again, he can go off at any time. I love his usage in this offense. It's just the games he doesn't score in, he's going to probably sit around the 50, 60 yard mark. But he can go off at any time. He's one of those guys that you get the ball in his hands and he's a touchdown.
He's almost always open.
He is. It's fantastic, and the way Derek Carr utilizes him downfield is great. Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill are going to be sits for me. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that every season we have like 1 or 2 Taysom Hill games, and I have a sneaky suspicion that this might be it.
Well, so if people looking at the graphics, you'll see I put Olave as a start. Chris has him as a sit. I switched him to a start, but with a caveat here is Jair Alexander is probably going to be on him the whole game, so it's going to be a difficult matchup. But yep. I'm putting my money on this young receiver and Derek Carr. Derek Carr has zero care of who is covering who. He's going to throw the ball up at any time.
It's true.
So that's the only thing I like about it. And then I'm agreeing with you what you were about to say about Taysom Hill. I switched him to a sleeper here.
Yeah.
Because there's an opportunity.
It's just I just have a sneaky suspicion that this is a Taysom Hill week.
Yeah, I do too.
And he got picked up today in our league, and I was like, you son of a biscuit. But I wasn't going to start him anyway. But I think that this is the week where Taysom Hill has one of those weeks where.
If you're streaming tight ends, to me, he's one of the ones that I'm more intrigued about trying to stream this week because he had 7 rushes last week,
Yeah.
After Jamal Williams came out, he started rushing the ball more. Just because
Yeah.
Kendra Miller comes back doesn't mean he's not going to run the ball now. I think he's going to run plenty of times here. And because I also think this is going to be a tougher matchup than we have the Saints as a start defense. Again, I forgot to count out to see how many starts we suggested for defenses, but you could almost say that the Green Bay Packers are a start here too as well, because Derek Carr turns the ball over. They have had a tough time running the ball. It may be a low scoring game, or the team that wins is going to be the one that, gets up gives up a bomb is the one that loses, and the one that wins is the one that connects, the dots a couple more times in deep passes, because it's going to be a rough and tough game. I think the Green Bay Packers are the team that probably ends up winning it if they have a full healthy Aaron Jones, and if they end up getting Christian Watson. If they don't, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup here.
I believe it's in Lambeau too. So we all know the splits on the Saints defense away from home. So that's a reason I don't kind of like that matchup for them. But it's a decent matchup enough to where if that's your defense, go ahead and play them.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Texans and Jaguars. Let's keep this train rolling here. This one is going to be interesting because the turnout and the final scoring for these games in the past were not what you expected, especially last year. Trevor Lawrence threw 0 touchdown passes against the Houston Texans last year. Now, that being said, Houston Texans were one of the best against the pass last year because they do have decent corners, but teams didn't have to pass the ball on them. They ran the ball on them because their rush defense was so terrible that passing attempts were the lowest and yardage was the lowest just because of that. So but they also, I think, turned over Trevor Lawrence a couple times. So to me here, we have a sleeper in CJ Stroud. He's been playing phenomenal. They're going to be playing from behind is what we're suggesting here. He's thrown for over 200 yards both times. He hasn't turned the ball over himself. He's been pretty good with it. So look for him to continue, which is why Nico Collins is a must start for us in this offense, because he is the alpha receiver here. Tank Dell's still a sleeper. We like him. We want to see if he can have a repeat performance. I'd even say Robert Woods is a sleeper because that guy has had, I think it's 17 targets or 16 targets in 2 games, something like that for Robert Woods. So I think he's had about 10 receptions too on it. Both receivers have been flying. They have barely ran the ball, which is why Dameon Pierce is a sit for us. Singletary's a sit. He's an afterthought anyway, even though Dameon Pierce is only for 40. He's out anyway. Yeah. Yep. Dameon Pierce is 45% of rushing attempts and stuff in this game, or snaps, in the past couple games. But that's because they've completely went away from the run and abandoned the run. I think it's going to be another game where they may do it, although Dameon Pierce had some great games against Jacksonville last year. Everybody could go and look at the Dameon Pierce 2022 highlight reel, and you'll see that rumbling, tumbling towards the end zone run where he was breaking tackles left and right, Lynch style.
You got to at least do it with a Chris Berman accent.
Yeah, well, you either don't do it with a Chris Berman accent, or you better do it in a good Chris Berman accent.
No, you always gotta make the attempt. It's about the attempt, Jono.
All right. Dalton Schultz is a sit. Houston Texans defense is a sit, even though they have dominated this matchup over the past season. I still think what the Jaguars showed last week, and Trevor Lawrence kind of had a down week too. I think he has a bounce back week here, and I think they don't have that many problems against this Houston Texans team.
Yeah, and then moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I really wanted to just light the whole screen green.
We pretty much did, except for Zay Jones.
Yeah, that's why I chose one of the receivers. Obviously I can't say start them all. I could, but I do think the way they performed last week against Kansas City, that offense looked poor, and they're going to come out and they're going to just absolutely dominate on offense. So I do think Trevor Lawrence is in for a big game. Etienne's in for a big game. Tank Bigsby, I think, is going to be a sleeper here, depending on his usage. The first week he looked great. The usage was great. Last week, almost nothing. And so I can't put him as a start yet. He's still going to be a sleeper for me. But especially with all the injuries at running back, I do think if you needed to throw in a sleeper this week, this is a good matchup for it. Calvin Ridley, go ahead and start, fire him up. Christian Kirk, One of these weeks we're going to be right on him. I promise.
Well, I think this is one with Zay Jones dealing with a knee injury, regardless if he plays or not. I think he may even be limited. Christian Kirk is the one to go here.
Yeah, I mean, like we saw Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's looked great so far through 2 weeks as a pass catcher. The volume has been great for him. I really like him as a start this week at the tight end position, and then the defense we have as a start as well against this offense.
One thing quick about Dameon Pierce and this Texans rush offense. Don't forget that pretty much the whole offensive line is injured right now, and they haven't the starting line. And so it's making it even more difficult for them to run the ball. He's a good running back. He has more yards after the contact than he has rushing yards. Think about that. He's being hit behind the line of scrimmage and making it back to the line of scrimmage constantly. So
if you guys don't know, Jono is a Dameon Pierce owner.
Oh, so I know these stats like here. I'm not starting him this week. I understand if you have to start him, you're not starting him confidently, but you're starting him saying this could be his game. I don't think it's going to be that way. It wouldn't surprise me if it is the way he runs the ball. He runs tough, but they haven't been giving him enough opportunities.
It's going to be our year.
No, I'm not saying I'm not saying it's going to be his game. I'm sitting him. I'm playing Jerome Ford over him, like I said. But just so you know, moving forward with Dameon Pierce, I think there's brighter pastures ahead. He's going to have an opportunity later on this season. I just don't feel confident until that offensive line gets heavy and they could actually start running the ball. Because that's the only way that the Texans are actually going to start winning games, because you can't just throw the ball the whole time and expect to win games here because your team's still giving up plays, so you have no clock possession. But let's move on to our next and probably most exciting matchup, Chargers-Vikings.
Chargers-Vikings.
So we got Justin Herbert as a start here. Anybody facing the Vikings right now or the Eagles is going to be a start. But you could say the same thing about the Chargers. We are sitting Austin Eckler because he's out. He's not playing again for a second straight week. Womp womp. I happen to be on the side of the womp womps as an owner of Austin Eckler.
But there's no injury designation.
There wasn't. Now they're saying there's no timetable for his return. I think honestly at the end of the day, he probably feels pretty good. And they just want to hold them off another week in a situation where they feel confident in Josh Kelly. And you should feel confident starting Josh Kelly in a Swiss cheese of an offense that the Vikings are right now. You are firing up Keenan Allen, absolutely, and you're firing up Mike Williams. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Williams is the one with 2 touchdowns this week. Keenan Allen, he had most targets last week for Chargers receivers. Keenan Allen was the recipient of both touchdowns. That could change. Josh Palmer actually looked pretty good last week too. You're sitting Quentin Johnston. He still hasn't had the breakout opportunities. He has that. And like we said, preseason, he's probably going to need an injury for that to happen. And you're sitting Gerald Everett. I just don't think there's enough mouths. There's enough food to feed these mouths here. I think to me, Gerald Everett is the odd man out. Although I did notice that they did target him a little bit more and go to him a tiny bit more with the fact that they weren't going to Josh Kelly like they normally do Eckler. So that is something to take a look at, but you still have Donald Parham that keeps going out there, whether he's healthy or not now. Right. And then the Chargers defense, you're not starting them with confidence because you are facing the QB1 in fantasy right now.
Yeah. I mean, like you can go ahead and start, you're going to get probably 6 or 7 sacks, but you're going to probably let up 30 points. Yeah. So that's the caveat there, and then we'll move on to the Vikings. This is a great matchup. This is my matchup that I'm going to sit and have on the main screen. I really like this one. There's going to be a lot of scoring back and forth, and I do have shares in both Josh Kelly and Justin Jefferson. I can't do the gritty, otherwise I would try.
I told him if he wins the league this year. I was prepping to do it last year if I beat Chris in the championship, which I didn't. But if Chris wins the championship again this year, which our entire league is fighting for that to not happen, I told him he needs to learn how to do the gritty, and he films a whole little championship victory video and sending it out there.
Maybe if we get to 1,000 subs, I will post a video of me doing the gritty. I will go in the backyard. We have a nice little gator in our back pond. I will find him and I will try to do a gritty around him. All right. Moving on to the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, go ahead and start him. He's going to get sacked a bunch. They might lose this game, but I don't care because he's throwing 350 and 2 or 3 touchdowns every game. Madison and Cam Akers. So here's the big news of the week is Cam Akers got traded. it's unlikely he's going to suit up and play. They said it's just too short of a week. He doesn't, he's not going to get this offense under his belt. So
you're not playing him anyway.
I'm not playing him either way. I mean,
I'm not playing Madison. I mean, this offensive line is hurt right now. I think they're getting
bad rushing offense.
Yeah, well, they are getting back one of their linemen, but I think they're without their center. I think they're getting their left tackle back, but still.
So that being said, JJ shoot him up. Jordan Addison, he's now again 2 weeks in a row. Go ahead and start him. He's a consistent. He is the number 2 here, and he's been a consistent target down the field. KJ Osborne is a sleeper this week. TJ Hawkinson's a start, and please feel